Hello and welcome to this seminar on the secrets of sleep. My name is Dr. Andreas Fonseca. I am a consultant psychiatrist and I am an honorary lecturer at UCL. I'm also CEO and co-founder at Thrive. I'd like to cover three main topics during this seminar. First, I'll start with discussing why sleep is so important. I believe that we don't pay enough attention to it. It is sacrificed and not taken seriously enough. And hopefully I will convince you by the end of this seminar that it is something worth your while paying attention to and is something that you really want to look after. I'll get to the part that everyone wants to hear about, which is what is the best way to get a good night's sleep. This is taking into account the most recent science on it. So hopefully that will be of some value. And the last but not least is, when is the problem going to be bad enough that you should take it seriously and seek help from a professional? So for a long time we didn't have a good answer for the question of why we sleep. We kind of thought it was like a waste of time, or many people perceived it as a waste of time, something that we do, but we could very well do without. In fact, some famous people have kind of remarked on their own ability to go without sleep. For example, Winston Churchill and Margaret Thatcher were famous for going to sleep or having a reduced need for sleep. Of course, it could be argued that they experienced health problems in middle age as a result of this lack of sleep, because we know that it affects almost all aspects of health. It affects your brain health directly, because we know that multiple brain processes require it and cannot go without it and are severely affected if we don't sleep enough. It's definitely going to affect our mind health, and we know that it protects against all mental health conditions. And it affects our body, which is something, again, that we probably have learned more recently. It can help prevent multiple chronic physical health conditions. So I'm going to go through each one of those in turn. First of all, brain health. So we know that there's two different types of sleep. First one is called non-REM sleep, and it's characterized by very slow rhythmical activity in the brain, which we now know is part of the basic maintenance function of the brain. During this time is where memory consolidation happens. So anything that we've learned the day before is going to go into more permanent storage during this phase of sleep. This non-REM sleep is predominant in the first half of the night, the first about 4 hours of sleep. Every 90 minutes or so, the brain has kind of a discussion with itself while it's at sleep and decides whether non-REM sleep or REM sleep is going to predominate during that 90-minute phase. And the first few phases are dominated completely by non-REM sleep. The second part of the night, from about 4 hours onwards onto 8 hours, which is when we should be waking up, is dominated by this other form of sleep called REM sleep. REM stands for rapid eye movement. It's a very different type of sleep. During that sleep, our muscles are paralyzed. It tends to be when we're dreaming. And if we look at the brain activity during this phase, is very rapid, and it actually resembles the activity of the brain when we are awake. During this phase, we know that is when our creativity is boosted and we do a lot of our problem solving. So if we forego this REM sleep, we will be less creative and less able to solve the issues that are going to affect us the following day. One other thing to know about this is that non-REM sleep, apart from helping the consolidation of memory, it also prepares the brain for receiving new information on the following day. And REM sleep also is what helps us connect different items of knowledge, different pieces of knowledge that we have stored in our memory, helps us put them together, see them in context, and that's what helps us actually learn things and be more effective in the next day. That's why if we don't sleep well, it's going to affect our concentration and our attention. And in fact, you have to take this very seriously, because is when we make mistakes and accidents, and is when we are putting ourselves and others in danger. So it's worth paying attention to how it affects our brain health. It affects our mind health very clearly. And it's interesting because poor sleep can be a cause of poor mind health, but it also can be the result or the effect of poor mind health. So on the first, if we talk about cause, we know that less than 6 hours of sleep per night is going to increase our risk of a range of conditions. And I've listed some here. So definitely depression and anxiety, but you might be surprised to hear that it also increases the risk of dementia. So it's worth taking very seriously. Most mental health conditions will affect sleep, so will reduce sleep. Sometimes they will increase it, but this increased time in bed is not associated with any more actual sleep, or the quality of the sleep that we have is very poor and is not restorative sleep. So we know, for example, that depression can affect sleep. In particular, it tends to make people wake up too early in the morning, is the phenomenon that we call early morning waking. Anxiety, it's probably the opposite problem. We can't stop thinking about worrisome things, and it takes us a long time to get to sleep, so it delays the onset of sleep, or it can lead to us waking up in the middle of the night in a panic, having those thoughts, those ruminations go over and over in our minds. Bipolar affective disorder is an interesting one, because when we have a manic phase, it's associated with a reduced need for sleep. The person feels full of energy and not tired at all, and they can sleep very little and feel that they don't need it. But in reality, we do see harmful effects from this sleep deprivation, and it actually makes the symptoms worse if we don't help the person to get sleep. In other more serious conditions like schizophrenia, sleep is disrupted, and the normal rhythm of sleep, of feeling sleepy during the night and being wakeful during the day, can be reversed. This is not just because of the condition itself, but it could be as an effect of some of the treatment as well. Now, these are more recent findings. We didn't really think that sleep was anything to do with our physical health in any way, but it turns out that it is a lot to do with our physical health. So much so that is considered one of the basic pillars of maintaining good health. So the other two would be, as you probably have heard a million times, spending time during the week exercising and exercising enough, and the other is having a good, balanced, healthy diet. So diet, exercise, and sleep. Those are the three pillars for leading a healthy life. So what can lack of sleep or reduced sleep do to our body health? It can result in us being much more likely to develop obesity. And again, that can be a vicious circle, because if we develop obesity, we are more likely to then develop a condition called sleep apnea. And sleep apnea is associated with very poor sleep. Basically, what happens is that your airway collapses during sleep, and that deprives your brain of oxygen, so that it feels it kind of that makes it wakeful. So the brain is in alarm mode. Of course, that creates anxiety, and you wake up, and you wake up because you need to breathe. You gasping for air. So that gives you a very, very poor quality of sleep with multiple waking, and even though you might be spending a long time in bed or even falling asleep during the day. Of course, it increases the risk of diabetes. This is both directly and also as a result of the obesity that I was talking about before. It increases the risk of infection because it directly affects the regulation of our immune system. It's a very clear link there. And it can result in infertility and decrease our sex drive. It definitely increases the risk of heart disease. This is again both directly as a result of the poor sleep, but also indirectly, perhaps as an effect of the fact that it increases the risk of diabetes and the risk of obesity. So now for the part that everybody is most interested in. So I'll go through what science has to say about how to get a good night's sleep. But also I'll make a comment on chronotypes as well. So first of all, just to say that 8 hours is the amount of sleep that is recommended for most people. Now, basically 7 hours, you're probably fine, and there's probably no ill effects. How do we know how much we need to sleep? In the absence of any sleep problems, if we're feeling well, and we just sleep naturally, and so we go to bed when we feel sleepy, and and we don't have an alarm clock, and we measure how long we sleep. Most people will sleep for about 7 to 8 hours, with the majority needing about 8 hours. Now, we know that most people will have negative effects if you sleep 6 hours or less. So you don't want to risk it, you want to aim for those 7 hours. So what I tend to say is that you need to give yourself a protected 8 hours sleep opportunity, and you have to be adamant about it. You have to really be a stickler for it. So too much sleep also correlates with poor long-term outcomes. So the problem with too much sleep is because the sleep drive has been somehow affected by some kind of condition. Is what I was saying before, perhaps about sleep apnea or other conditions. When we have this increased sleep, it's either because of sedation as well, and the sleep quality, basically it's telling us that the sleep quality that we're getting and the sleep efficiency is very poor. So therefore, whatever sleep we're getting, even though we're getting too many hours or more than normal, is not good quality sleep. There's one thing to bear in mind here, is that this is true for adults. Now, younger people need more sleep, particularly teenagers may need 9-10 hours of sleep. The brain is different, it is in development, and it is very clear, all the evidence suggesting that they need a longer period of sleep than adults do. So what are chronotypes. So, I mean, this is a concept that is a little bit overhyped because most people fall in the middle, and most people are neither an early bird nor a night owl. However, some people do have these characteristics. Some people feel tired and sleepy much earlier than others, and some people they are very wakeful quite late into the night. This is normal variance within the population, and as I say in the slide, there's probably good evolutionary reasons for this. If you think about a population of about 150 individuals in, say, some kind of a communal organization, some kind of a tribe, then to ward against predators or other hostile groups, bearing in mind that we need 8 hours of sleep, you do need some individuals that are going to be alert until quite late into the night, and then maybe sleep until quite late into the day. That's okay, because they're protected by the majority of the people who are wakeful during that time. But also you need people that need to go to sleep very early and perhaps wake up very early to try and cover the whole 24-hour clock. So yes, a significant minority will be these two chronotypes, and it's probably because of that reason, because of the need to, in a group, to be wakeful most of the time. So this is the first of the specific advice about how to get a better night's sleep. And it's probably the most important. So establishing a good routine. So go to bed at the same time. Why is this important? Well, two reasons. One, you probably experience this phenomenon where you need to wake up at whatever time and you set your alarm, and lo and behold, you wake up a few minutes before the alarm goes off. And this is like a consistent phenomenon. So there is a clock in your brain that actually regulates sleep up to the minute. So if you change the time that you go to bed, you're going to mess with this internal clock, and you are going to still wake up probably at the same time, and you're going to reduce your time if you for example go to bed a bit later. So you need to be consistent, but also you need to preserve the balance between REM sleep and non-REM sleep. If you go to bed earlier than normal, for example, you are going to have more non-REM sleep than REM sleep. Just because there's this clock in your head. So the shift between non-REM and REM tends to happen at the middle of your sleep, or what your brain expects to be the middle of your sleep, and that is actual chronological time, not how long you've been in bed. So for example, if you go quite late, then you will have reduced non-REM sleep and increased REM sleep. So that's why it's important to maintain that time. A wind down routine, very important to develop. This is like the same actions in the same order at the same time to give this very strong signal to your brain that it's time to wind down and go to bed. And it can include things like having a warm, non-decaffeinated or caffeine-free drink, brushing your teeth without any bright lights. You'll see why that's important later. Doing some gentle exercise, for example, yoga might get you in the mood. Music might be helpful, and anything else that helps you wind down. Beware of things like watching television, particularly if you're watching anything on like a tablet or a phone. And again, I'll talk about that later and why that's important. And once you've developed this routine, it's very important to stick to it. You have to be very disciplined and really resist any deviation from it. And this is what science has to say about routine. It's actually quite an important component. This is perhaps a surprising one in that we know that it's probably a stronger trigger for sleep than maybe other triggers such as light, the darkness in particular. So what your body needs is a change in temperature. So you have to be at a higher body temperature and go to a lower body temperature. That is the trigger for sleep. So so watch the temperature in the bedroom. Perhaps on the chilly side. If it's a bit warm, if it feels a bit too warm, that might not be a good idea. How do you make this temperature shift that I was talking about? There's a very good way, which is maybe having a warm bath or a shower before bed. With doing that, you might, if you do it for long enough, you will elevate your core temperature, and as you come out of the shower, you naturally will have this cool down period, which actually is a very strong trigger for sleep. And again, comfortable clothes that are not going to be too stuffy and too hot. What you really don't want is to go to bed nice and cool, having cooled off, and then get hotter during the night, because that is a trigger for waking up. Why might this be the case? Well, if you think about it, temperature before we had central heating and all that, temperature tended to be warmer when the sun was out, so and actually gets cooler in the night. So that is what we've evolved to respond to. So here, this one, I don't think we've changed our advice recently. Basically, you know that it needs to be dark, and I'm serious about this, like seriously dark. If it's not dark enough, particularly in the morning, you need to perhaps use blinds. In summertime, this is actually quite a bad thing because it gets light very early. So you want to use blinds, blackout curtains, whatever you need to do, and make sure that they fully close. And you can use masks, eye masks as well, if necessary, to sort of protect your eyes from the light. During the night, as part of your bedtime routine, is a good idea to dim artificial light. Sometimes, if you can get them, having filters might be a good idea. So this is filters that take out blue light, so they give light a yellowish, warm tinge, and that seems to be helpful for some people. And again, be particularly aware of the lighting conditions in the bathroom. If you can have a dim light for the night, if you need to go and use the bathroom in the night, you don't want to be exposed to very, very bright white light. You can also wear glasses that filter out blue light. These yellow glasses that filter out blue light, and you can incorporate wearing these glasses as part of your bedtime routine. It's very effective for some people. Now, devices, handheld devices, tablets, mobile phones emit a very powerful blue light. They're very bright, and they're also quite distracting and demanding of attention. So they need to be banned from the bedroom completely. I know that this will take a lot of discipline, but it's very important. You need to make sure it's quiet. If you can, make sure that the bedroom is isolated from noises as best as you can. Nature sounds can be helpful. Some people actually find soft music quite soothing as well, and that's probably perfectly reasonable. Singable vocals, singable lyrics in songs, probably not a good idea, but instrumental music might be. And devices. So if you're going to sort of play some music or some nature sounds, just be aware of how you're going to do that and not be exposed to those bright lights and distracting devices that we were talking about before. Earplugs, they're a good idea if there's no other way of making the environment quiet. So the advice on exercise has changed recently. Basically, it seems to be brilliant all around. So what we're discovering is that exercise, almost any amount of exercise, the more the better, is going to be good for health, mental health, physical health, sleep, you name it. So it's brilliant during the day, everything, cardio, weightlifting, all of that is good. Also may contribute to lose weight, which is going to contribute to sleep better. But you can do exercise at night as well. So the more recent studies suggest that any kind of exercise at night is perfectly fine. It's actually sleep promoting. And you can use it as part of your wind down routine. You might want to go for the more gentle exercise because you might want it not to be too noisy. And it's just maybe part of your wind down routine. But yeah, just make sure that you understand that exercise is good at any point. And as I said, maybe yoga, because it's less noisy, might be best suited for the night, but not necessarily. Any exercise is good. So caffeine is to be avoided if you're struggling to sleep, even if you're not. And I'll tell you why. I mean, one of the main issues is that it kind of hangs around in your body for a long time. So if you have a cup of tea, or a cup of coffee or something like that, at midday, about half to a quarter of the caffeine that you had when you had that cup of tea or cup of coffee still hanging around in your body by the time you go to bed. So you may just want to drink all your caffeinated drinks in the morning and in the morning only. You may be taking caffeine that you're not aware of taking. So sometimes they put it in painkillers. So just be aware. And also there's some drinks that don't seem caffeinated that may be. So just watch out. And even if it never affected you, it is a good idea to avoid it, particularly later in the day, because it affects sleep architecture. So we know this for a fact. So even though you might think to yourself that you had a good night's sleep and that it's not stopping you from sleeping, it may affect the efficiency and the quality of your sleep. So caffeinated drinks, probably morning only. So alcohol is a big issue because some people think it's helpful for sleep or helps them relax. And this is why I talk about this nightcap, which I'm always in two minds about how to approach it. So I'm going to leave it for a bit later. But first, let me just say that is generally a bad idea. You may feel that it's helping you to sleep, but the sleep quality is appalling. You're going to wake up multiple times. It's terrible. So even though it seems to help, it doesn't at all, and is bad. So you wake up multiple times, but you don't even remember waking up. So you think you may have had good rest, and you really haven't. So yeah, so probably avoid altogether, particularly later in the day. It does affect your sleep architecture, even at low doses, even if you're not anywhere near feeling a little bit intoxicated. Some people have it as part of their nighttime routine, and it's very helpful for them to unwind. And in those cases, I find it really hard to discourage it. It will affect sleep architecture, but what if they don't take it and they don't have that wind down routine? They might not be able to go to sleep as early as otherwise they would. So who am I to criticize that? Suppose in moderation, and if it's really helpful, then it might be justified. Smoking is a bad idea. It is a stimulant, so it's going to wake you up and it's going to affect your sleep architecture for sure. Your REM sleep, non-REM sleep, all of that is going to get messed with by nicotine and all the chemicals in cigarettes. What about cravings? So some people tell me that they need a cigarette to stop the cravings so they don't feel anxious. It's worth cutting down at night. It doesn't seem like it will, but it will affect the quality of your sleep. So, just take it seriously. Try to cut down. Do something about it. It does change things like oxygen saturation, and it affects your airways. So it may affect your sleep in that way, and it may make things like sleep apnea worse. What we want to avoid is having a big meal just before bed. So it's best to leave a few hours, and it's best to eat a light dinner. And if you have to eat more at lunch, then that's fine. You want to limit processed foods. Beverages high in sugar are going to be a problem, and they will increase your risk of becoming overweight, which is going to affect your sleep. It might lead to fatty liver. Again, that's going to affect your sleep. So yeah, just watch out for what you eat and don't have a heavy dinner. Having a nap during the day, if you're struggling to sleep at night, is not a good idea. It's best to try and stay awake. It's not harmful if you're sleeping well and there's no problems, but if you're struggling to sleep, then you should avoid it. If you wake up in the middle of the night and you're not back asleep within 10-15 minutes, you need to leave the bed and the bedroom and go to another room, do whatever it is, do maybe part of your wind down routine, whatever, to get back in the groove of going back to sleep. Again, keep the lights dim, the noises to a minimum, blue light to nothing if you can, stay away from screens, all of that. But only go back to bed when you're feeling sleep. And your bedroom, you need to sort of associate it with just sleep. So the brain is very good at forming these habits. You don't want to teach the brain that the bedroom is an office or the bedroom is the place where you watch television or you play video games or whatever. So it needs to be the place for sleep and for intimacy only. You need to manage your stress to enable you to have a restful night. How do you do that? Good technique is to write down the tasks and worries, have it like as part of a to-do list, have like a time that you will deal with it. So this sends a very powerful message to your brain that this thing, even though you haven't really tackled it yet, you do have a time to tackle it so it can rest and it knows that you will be dealing with it at the appropriate time. So there's no need to ruminate on this or worry about it, keep thinking about it. The techniques that we have in the app are very useful to get you to sleep better. Some are simple to learn, like the breathing technique. Some are quite require quite a lot of training to master them, but it's well worth your time. And I really encourage you to learn them so you can successfully use them, maybe as part of your routine. And just incorporate them. So it's an easy way of having a relaxation added to your day. You have a space and a time for it. So what if you've tried all of these techniques and you're still having difficulties? When do we need to seek help? If your poor sleep is affecting your productivity, your ability to sort of carry on with your life, anything like that, you need to consider seeking help from your GP. If your sleep is causing you distress, being unhappy, being anxious, making you low in mood, is causing you any suffering of any description, you need to sort of consider whether you should seek help. If it's going on for a long time, days, even if it's on and off, you need to consult. The sleep is so important that you cannot just leave it. And you cannot really catch up on weekends. You know, lost sleep is lost sleep, and it will have an impact on your health. So you do need to take it seriously and seek advice if it's going on for a long time. If you have other symptoms apart from insomnia, you definitely need to sort of be thinking about seeking help. I hope that was a useful overview of what we know about how sleep affects our physical and our mental health, and also what the latest advice about how to get a good night's sleep is. So thank you very much for your attention, and I hope it was useful.